Okay, so I decided to pause the Relief Society episode that I did. There's good reason for it. I'm not going to divulge what it is, but it's not because it wasn't true. You know, I'm bringing up some of the comments that have been stated. Everything about it is true. Yes, it happened. I've got the files, everything else, right? It's all true. And it's happening many, many times in many, many places. And not the exact same presentation, but something very similar, pretty much regurgitating the talking points of this identitarian pride movement, right? I didn't do it because the church pressured me to take it down. I didn't do it because there was criticism. I live with criticism every day on the types of subjects that I cover. So it's nothing like that, right? It's nothing like that. But I do need to pause it because I just think it's right now, it's the right thing to do. So enjoy the walk. All right, let's take a walk. I'm going to talk a little bit about the video I put up yesterday, the episode on the Stake Relief Society LGBTQ presentation. I want to go over the reactions to this, the comments, because I think there's some important things to parse out on this. First of all, this episode is brought to you by Go and Do Travel. I am the official spokesperson for them. Very happy about that relationship. Go and Do Travel gives offers trips domestically here in the U.S., in Mexico, in the Caribbean, in Europe, in the Middle East. I've talked a lot about the Gospel on the Nile. I've got a new one coming up that I want to go over here shortly that I'm very excited about, called The Journey of Wisdom. But Go and Do Travel is your Latter-day Saint travel partner, and you can go to their website at Go and Do Travel and check out all of the different trips that they offer there. Make sure that you're going to put in the promo code of Cwic. That's CWIC, and you'll get a discount on the trip that you may choose to go on. All right. Now, reaction to the Relief Society, Stake Relief Society LGBTQ presentation. Hold on, I'm looking out here at the valley. I want you to see if you can get a gander at the Phoenix Valley there, right? Beautiful. Very cool. Okay. Hey, check out this house. That is a very modernish type of architecture there. So what do I want to say here? A couple of things I think that are pretty important. There, I saw 3 different reactions that I want to talk about. The majority were, you know, hey, this is happening and we understand it, and, you know, it would go along with basically the way the presentation was given or the episode was given. But there's 3 different types of reactions that do not, and I want to bring those up. First of all, there is the reaction of those that are calling it clickbait. And there's 2 different types of this, but the first one is someone who is gaslighting. These are people that are pro-pride movement, right? Not just love your neighbor type of thing, but actually pro-pride movement. And this is, I know this because I have gotten this for years. I understand what they do. And this is gaslighting. And so the reaction on these is, this never happened. This didn't happen at all. This is all about clickbait and trying to get views, which is preposterous. I never know ever what is going to get more views than not. I'm always shocked by that. But that is gaslighting. And I think that I've had this happen before, but those that sat in that presentation, if they see that comment, then they will understand the gaslighting that happens, right, on that end. That, oh, this never happened. And you say, well, Greg, why would anybody do that? That just seems a little much, a little far-fetched. It's like, no, you need to understand that those individuals want this to happen in a subversive manner. I hate to say that, but that is true. And there are individuals that are like that. And they will deny it and deny it and deny it, because even though they know it is likely true. They don't want it brought out into the public. And that's concerning, obviously, but it's true. And I think that people should be aware of that there are actually people like that. Secondly, there would be people that say it's clickbaity that are actually, let's say they're listeners of my program, listeners of Cwic Show. And they'll say, this isn't really happening that often. Maybe that happened here, but saying that this is happening all the time and all over the place is really a stretch. So let me say something on this. I did say that, I think I did say in there that this is happening all the time and happening everywhere. That may not be the right way for me to say it, because you could infer a lot of different things from that, right? Does that mean that it's, just one more look here at the valley. Out there. Does that mean that it's like systematically happening in all stakes everywhere? And no, that's not what I mean. And so I want to clarify that. I should probably say something more along the lines of it's happening a lot. The reason I make that type of a statement is because I want people to understand that this is not a one-off. This is not something that just happened to, occur somewhere far away from you. This is something that happens often in Utah County. This happens in Salt Lake County. This happens in Arizona. This happens in, other places that you wouldn't consider to be real, far left or real woke, like California or wherever it might be. This is something that is, that does happen in many different places in the United States. And I didn't put the slides up because I couldn't. And in this case, I couldn't. I will protect people, even the culprits. I will typically protect, because the last thing in the world that I want is to be some, launch pad for pointed fingers at an individual or a stake president or a bishop. That's not how we do this. That is not the way that this is to be done. And so I try to be very careful about that. And this would have implicated, right? The images I had would have implicated people. And I'm not going to do that. There are other times where I feel like, okay, this can be done. This is not something that, maybe this is appropriate enough. It's public enough, right? This is not a public thing, but it's public enough that I can cover this and say things and be a little bit more specific. This is not one of those cases. But you're putting your head in the sand if you think that this is not happening. I do not put up a 50th of the reports I get on the things that like this that are happening. Right? If I was put up there was another one yesterday in Highland, Utah, on a social justice approach to racism and same-sex attraction that was given. I've got slides on it. Right? I'm not probably going to report on it. I get this all the time. And those of you that are in Highland, that are in that stake, in that ward, you know what I'm talking about. Right? It's not, this does happen. It's so interesting to me because I've gone over these things and I don't report on these that often. It's just kind of like, I feel to myself, I feel like, okay, well, maybe it's about time I should say something again on this. It's been a while. But I get these reports all the time. Most of them do not have visual confirmation. But I know they're real. I know what's happening. I ask for specifics when I hear these things. And I don't usually report on them, hardly ever, honestly, based on the amount of reports that I do get. And so please keep that in mind. This is not, wow, I got another one of these reports. I'm going to go ahead and put this out on an episode. No, I get them, 2 or 3 of these things a week. And maybe 1 in 10, probably less than that, actually have some type of verbal confirmation to them, or visual confirmation on that. This last one was one of those, but I wasn't going to use it. I'm not going to use it. So it's, if you have followed my show, you should know by now, I'm not going to create hyperbole around these types of things. It is the opposite. And, you know, I went through this, I go through this almost every time I post something like this. But, and you notice I really don't post that many, maybe once every 2 or 3 months or 6 months, I don't know. But I did this, I went through the same thing with BYU. And pre-COVID, I started talking about BYU and the things that were being taught in some of the classrooms, what was up in a lot of the faculty members' offices that were completely pride-oriented or very social justice oriented. And as I started talking about it, the same thing happened. This is not happening at BYU. This is ridiculous. You are putting up clickbait. But maybe again, 1 out of a little less at BYU than with the church, but maybe 1 out of 10 different reports I would get. I started putting them up and showing visual confirmation. The homework that was being assigned, the actual audio and or visual of the presentations, the slides, student testimony and witnessing of being in the class and what was taught. I put up a, wow, that was a steep hill. I put up a collage of several videos, maybe a dozen to 20 during COVID, where these things had been put on video because of COVID and they weren't meeting in the classrooms as much. I think it's called, that episode is called something like, "This is what your kids are being taught at BYU." And it's horrific. And even then, I probably have 50 clips. And this isn't just in some strange department or classroom. This is wide open to the students. This is in a department. This is in a college that these things are being stated. And it's the same thing. People didn't want to believe that this was true. It is true. And I'm not trying to be knee-jerky. I'm not trying to create a problem. But I believe something very firmly, and that is that we no longer live in an age where you can put your head in the sand and pretend like these things aren't happening, because they will come up and bite you in the rear. You cannot do that. You need to be aware of what is happening. There are several students who went to BYU that were radicalized. And sure enough, after everything I'd put up, and I'm not saying it was because of me, that's not what I'm saying, but Elder Holland came out with his musket talk, right? In 2021, there have been some very serious changes in hiring practices at BYU because they know there was a problem. And they're hopefully taking care of that. I think that Shane Reese is the right guy. Justin Collins is the right guy. These are good men. They've got good people around them, and I think they're really making some changes, some good things. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but I think they're doing some really good things at BYU. But this is not a one-off. It is not. It does happen often. It does happen in a lot of different places, and it is. It's not about clickbait. It is not. I am told very often by individuals that send me things, why didn't you ever put this up? Why didn't you ever put this up? And I don't want to be the channel or the medium through which all I'm doing is putting through the problems found in the church, found in the culture. That's not what I'm about, right? But I am about awareness. So I am going to put these up from time to time. And please understand that they are one example of many. And if you still have a hard time, believe me, go back and watch the BYU series and watch how that developed and what I did there. So I think it's important. There's two things I had said in a previous episode just recently with Julie Beck, who I think gave that that amazing talk on family. Anti-family is anti-Christ. If you haven't seen that, go watch that. That also went out on Sunday morning. And that is when you encounter these things, if your head is in the sand and you don't think these things are happening, and then it happens to you tomorrow, right? And then I think there's a couple things to understand. Number one, you don't want to participate in the spiral of silence. You need to say something. You don't want to cause a problem, but you need to say something. The one of the reasons this is spreading so much among the church is because people don't say anything, because they think it's the wrong thing to not be polite. And so two things. One, conflict is not necessarily contention. Conflict is inevitable. If you are living by the gospel and you are watching Babylon move further and further away from that gospel, you're going to encounter conflict in your schools, at work, out and about in your culture, online, and yes, in church from time to time. Conflict is going to happen. It's inevitable. Look at the scriptures. You rarely read the scriptures where they're not in conflict. So, what matters is how you handle the conflict. You can handle that in a contentious way that's not good. Or you can handle it faithfully, caring about the other person, but standing up for truth, right? So that's one. Conflict is not necessarily contention. Number two, there's a lot of talk about peacekeeping, right? Peace is not the surrender of truth. That is not what peace is. All you're doing there is being polite. All you're doing there is being passive. If you are simply, you're going to turn around and get away from that machine. If you are simply, not standing up for truth, that is not cool. That's not being peacemaking. That is not peacemaking. Sorry. And that is a real problem. And so I think those are a couple of things from General Conference, from the prophet, that have been weaponized in a way. It's like, well, you're not being peaceful. It's like, are you being peaceful? You're pushing this out here against truth. Or is that peace? Is that like Salem, right? When Melchizedek was the king of Salem, and originally it was a very, very wicked place. And yet he turned it all around. Can you imagine the conflict that would have arisen in making that change? And in order to get there. And so he's creating peace, Salem, while he's going through that conflict, without trying to be contentious and hating on the individuals. That's, I don't think those specifics are there, but I think that's how it has to be done. Right? And of course, he's not giving in on truth. Jesus was the same way. He was always in conflict with those around him, sometimes with his own disciples. And he's like the King of Peace, right? He's the Prince of Peace. So I think we need to be very careful about those two comments. This is not a conspiracy theory. You'll be told that. You'll be told that. But it's going to happen more than likely to you eventually, in one way or another. And if it's happened at school for you, at work, or other places, it's kind of naive to think that eventually that doesn't happen at church. And what you need to know is, how do I handle it? If I have an awareness of these things, if I understand how to work through them, if I know this is out there, it's a lot easier to, number one, stand up for the truth, and number two, to handle it in the proper way. Thanks for listening.